Double Victory, the untold story of black soldiers in World War II. A dream deferred. The dust of Fort Benning, Georgia, clung to everything in the summer of 1942. It coated the barracks, settled on the uniforms, and seemed to seep into the very souls of the men training there. For Sergeant Major Thomas "Tommy" Jefferson, a seasoned soldier of 35, the dust was a familiar companion, much like the bitter taste of injustice. He'd seen enough of both in his life in the segregated South. Tommy, a man whose eyes held the weariness of 1,000 sunrises over Georgia cotton fields, barked orders with a voice like gravel, honed by years of leading men who were, by law, considered second-class citizens. Yet, here they were, preparing to fight for a nation that denied them basic dignity. Private James "Jim" Washington, a fresh-faced recruit of 22 from the bayous of Louisiana, looked at Tommy with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Jim was an idealist, his heart brimming with the hope that this war, this grand crusade against fascism, would finally prove their worth. He believed in the promise of America, even if America hadn't yet believed in him. Sergeant Major, Jim ventured one sweltering afternoon, wiping sweat from his brow, Do you think things will be different when we come back?" Tommy paused, his gaze sweeping over the rows of black soldiers marching in perfect synchronicity, their faces a mosaic of determination and unspoken questions. "Different, Private Washington," he rasped, a dry chuckle escaping his lips. "Son, we are marching out of one Egypt, hoping to find a promised land that ain't even on the map yet. We are like the Israelites, wandering in the wilderness, chasing a freedom we've only heard tell of." The biblical reference to Exodus, to a people yearning for liberation from bondage, resonated deeply among the black troops. They were embarking on a journey, not just across an ocean, but towards an elusive freedom, a promised land of equality that felt as distant as the stars. The training was rigorous, designed to forge soldiers, but it was also steeped in the humiliating realities of segregation. Black troops trained in separate facilities, ate in separate mess halls, and were often assigned menial tasks, regardless of their skills or rank. White officers, many from the South, often treated them with contempt, questioning their courage and competence. Yet, these men pushed through, driven by a complex patriotism, a love for an ideal America, even if it didn't yet exist. Captain Robert "Bob" Lewis, a 40-year-old black officer, embodied this struggle. A graduate of Howard University, Captain Lewis was a visionary leader, articulate and fiercely intelligent. He fought battles not just on the training grounds, but in the administrative offices, challenging discriminatory policies, demanding proper equipment, and advocating for his men. "We are fighting for a double victory," Captain Lewis often told his officers, his voice calm but firm. "Victory over fascism abroad, and victory over racism at home. One cannot truly exist without the other." His words were a beacon, a reminder that their fight was multifaceted, a testament to their unwavering spirit in the face of systemic oppression. Colonel Henry Patterson, a 50-year-old senior commanding officer, was one of the few white officers who genuinely championed their cause. He understood the strategic folly and moral bankruptcy of segregation. He saw the potential, the raw courage, and the untapped talent in these black soldiers. Colonel Patterson often clashed with his peers, arguing for integrated units, for equal opportunities. "These men are as American as any other," he's reported to have said in a heated meeting. "They bleed red, and they are willing to die for this country. To deny them their full rights is to deny the very principles we claim to be fighting for." His efforts, though often met with resistance, provided a glimmer of hope, a crack in the monolithic wall of prejudice. The sound of marching boots echoed across the dusty parade ground, a rhythmic pulse of defiance and determination. Each step was a prayer, a silent declaration of their right to be seen, to be heard, to be free. Jim, though still idealistic, began to understand the profound weight of Tommy's words. This wasn't just a war, it was a pilgrimage. They were leaving the familiar, oppressive landscape of their American Egypt, venturing into the unknown, hoping that somewhere, beyond the battlefields, lay a land where their sacrifices would finally be honored, and their humanity fully recognized. The journey was long, fraught with peril, and the promised land remained a distant, shimmering mirage. But they marched on, their hearts filled with a hope that refused to be extinguished. If you want to learn more about overlooked World War II stories, please subscribe to our channel for more untold histories. The roar of engines and the acrid smell of burning oil replaced the dust of Georgia. In the unforgiving deserts of North Africa, the black soldiers of the American Expeditionary Force found themselves on the front lines, facing an enemy that preached racial supremacy with chilling conviction. For Sergeant Major Tommy Jefferson and Private Jim Washington, the transition from segregated training camps to the brutal realities of combat was stark. Here, under the relentless sun of Tunisia, the color of a man's skin mattered less than the steadiness of his aim and the courage in his heart. Their first major engagement was a baptism by fire, a chaotic symphony of machine gun fire, exploding shells, and the desperate cries of men. Jim, initially overwhelmed, found himself relying on Tommy's calm leadership. Tommy, a veteran of countless skirmishes in his mind, moved with a practiced efficiency, his rifle spitting fire, his eyes scanning for threats. "Keep your head down, Washington! And keep firing," he yelled over the din, pulling Jim behind a crumbling wall as a German tank rumbled past, its cannon spitting death. This was the David and Goliath moment, not just against the formidable German war machine, but against the insidious Goliath of prejudice that still shadowed their every move. They were often given inferior equipment, assigned to the most dangerous positions, and their valor frequently went unacknowledged by the white command. Yet, they fought with a ferocity born of a double purpose, to defeat the Nazis and to prove, beyond any doubt, their right to equality. Captain Robert Lewis, leading his company with unwavering resolve, was a beacon of inspiration. During a particularly brutal push through a heavily fortified German position in the Tunisian hills, his unit faced overwhelming odds. Ammunition was low, casualties mounted, and the enemy seemed to be everywhere. Captain Lewis, instead of retreating, rallied his men. "Remember why we are here," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We fight for freedom abroad, and for freedom at home. Every inch we gain here is a step towards justice." He led a desperate charge, personally taking out a machine gun nest that had pinned down his men, his actions inspiring a surge of courage that turned the tide of the battle. The soundscape of North Africa was a cacophony of war, the distant thud of artillery, the sharp crack of rifles, the metallic clatter of tanks, and the constant, buzzing drone of flies. Later, as the war shifted to Europe, the sounds changed but the intensity remained. In the dense forests of France, the chilling whistle of incoming mortar rounds became a familiar terror. In the frozen fields of Belgium, the crunch of snow underfoot mingled with the distant rumble of German panzers. One particularly harrowing incident occurred during the Battle of the Bulge. Jim, now a seasoned combatant, found himself separated from his unit during a German counteroffensive. He stumbled upon a small group of white American soldiers, pinned down and out of ammunition, their lieutenant severely wounded. Despite the ingrained segregation and the unspoken tension, Jim didn't hesitate. He used his training, his knowledge of the terrain, and his sheer courage to help them. He provided cover fire, tended to the wounded lieutenant, and guided them back to friendly lines. It was a moment where the common enemy transcended racial divides, a raw testament to shared humanity in the face of death. Nurse Miriam Hayes, though far from the front lines, fought her own battles. Stationed in a field hospital in France, she tended to the wounded of all races, but often faced discrimination from white nurses and doctors. Miriam, 28, was a passionate advocate for her patients and her fellow black nurses. She saw the physical and psychological toll of war, and she understood that the wounds of racism ran deeper than any bullet. She worked tirelessly, her hands gentle yet firm, her spirit unyielding. She often wrote letters home, not just about the horrors of war, but about the quiet acts of heroism she witnessed daily, both on the battlefield and within the hospital walls. "These men," she wrote to her sister, "they are proving their worth 1,000 times over. They are Davids fighting Goliaths on every front, and their courage is a light in this terrible darkness." The bravery of these black soldiers, often unsung and unrecorded in official histories, was undeniable. They faced down the enemy with valor, endured the indignities of segregation with resilience, and fought for a double victory that would reshape the world. Their sacrifices were immense, their contributions invaluable, and their courage under fire, an enduring legacy. Like this video if you believe these heroes deserve to be remembered. Hit that like button. The war raged on, but for many, the true battle was fought in the quiet moments between engagements, in the rustle of paper, and the scratch of a pen. letters from abroad became lifelines, connecting soldiers to home, to hope, and to the ideals they were fighting for. For Sergeant Major Tommy Jefferson, writing home was a rare luxury, a chance to shed the hardened shell of command and reflect on the profound paradox of his existence. He wrote to his wife, Martha, about the beauty of the French countryside, the camaraderie with his men, and the stark contrast between the freedom he was fighting to defend and the freedom he was still denied. "Martha, my love," he penned one evening, the faint scent of gunpowder still clinging to his uniform, "we saw a German soldier today, wounded, crying for his mother. And I thought, he's just a man. It's strange, fighting men who are just men, while back home, some folks don't even see us as men. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What is this freedom we are spilling our blood for?" His words echoed the philosophical questions that plagued many black soldiers. How could they champion liberty for others when their own was so constrained? Private Jim Washington, more articulate and idealistic, poured his heart out in letters to his family in Louisiana. He described the horrors of combat, the loss of friends, but also the unexpected moments of shared humanity. He recounted an incident where his unit, after liberating a small French village, shared their meager rations with the starving locals, regardless of their skin color or language. "It reminded me of the Good Samaritan, Mama," he wrote, "how kindness knows no boundaries. We are all just people, trying to survive, trying to find a little bit of good in a world gone mad. If we can see that here, why can't they see it back home?" The parable of the Good Samaritan became a recurring theme in their discussions, a powerful metaphor for transcending racial and national divides. They saw it in the French villagers who welcomed them, in the occasional white soldier who treated them with respect, and in their own unwavering commitment to aid anyone in need, regardless of their background. It was a stark contrast to the racial segregation they faced within their own military and back home. Captain Robert Lewis, ever the intellectual, used his letters to his former university professor to articulate the deeper implications of their struggle. He wrote about the strategic folly of segregation, how it undermined morale and efficiency, and how the war was forcing a re-evaluation of racial hierarchies. "The crucible of war," he wrote, "is melting away the superficial differences. Here, a man's worth is measured by his courage, his skill, his loyalty. We are proving, day by day, that the color of one's skin has no bearing on one's capacity for heroism or leadership. This war, for all its horrors, is also a great equalizer, a brutal teacher of shared humanity." Nurse Miriam Hayes, in her letters to her medical colleagues back in the States, painted vivid pictures of the suffering she witnessed and the resilience of the human spirit. She described treating soldiers of all nationalities, their pain a universal language. She also detailed the subtle and overt racism she faced, even in the midst of a global conflict. "I treat German prisoners with the same care as our own boys," she wrote, "because that is my duty, and because they are human beings. Yet, I am still denied the right to sit at the same table as some of my white colleagues. It is a wound that festers, even as we heal others." Her letters were a powerful testimony to the hypocrisy of a nation fighting for freedom abroad while denying it to its own citizens. The sound of a distant train whistle, carrying supplies and mail, often brought a momentary hush to the camps. The rustle of paper, the quiet murmurs of men reading words from home, the occasional tear shed in private, these were the sounds of hearts yearning for connection, for understanding, for a future where their sacrifices would be truly honored. These letters, often censored and carefully worded, were more than just personal correspondence. They were historical documents, raw and unfiltered accounts of a double victory being fought on two fronts. They were testaments to courage, resilience, and an unwavering belief in the fundamental goodness of humanity, even when humanity itself seemed to be failing. Comment below, what do you think about the sacrifice of these soldiers? Share your thoughts. The guns fell silent. The parades began. For the black soldiers who had fought valiantly in North Africa and Europe, the return home was supposed to be a triumphant homecoming, a celebration of their double victory. But the reality that greeted them was a stark reminder that the war against racism was far from over. Sergeant Major Tommy Jefferson stepped off the troop transport onto American soil, the cheers of the crowd a distant echo against the silence of his own heart. He had faced down Nazis, endured unimaginable horrors, only to return to a country where he was still expected to sit at the back of the bus, drink from separate fountains, and be denied the basic rights he had fought to protect. Private Jim Washington, his uniform still crisp, his chest adorned with medals, found himself confronted by the same old prejudices. He tried to enroll in college using the GI Bill, only to be met with resistance and outright denial from segregated institutions. He sought employment, only to be told, "We don't hire coloreds for that kind of work." The bitter taste of disappointment was almost as potent as the fear he had felt on the battlefield. "It's like we won the war, but lost the peace," he confided in Tommy, his youthful idealism now tempered by a profound weariness. Captain Robert Lewis, now a decorated veteran, returned with a renewed sense of purpose. He understood that the fight for freedom, as articulated in Paul's letters, was not just about physical liberation from an oppressor, but a spiritual and societal liberation from the chains of prejudice and injustice. Paul's message of unity in Christ, of breaking down walls of division, resonated deeply with his vision for a truly equal America. Captain Lewis dedicated his post-war life to civil rights activism, using his military experience and his powerful voice to demand change. He organized veterans, spoke at rallies, and tirelessly lobbied for legislation that would dismantle segregation. "We fought for freedom abroad," he declared in a powerful speech, "and now we must fight for freedom at home." The true victory will only be achieved when every American, regardless of color, can walk in dignity and equality. Nurse Miriam Hayes, having witnessed the universal suffering of war, returned with an unshakable resolve to improve healthcare access and fight for racial equality in the medical field. She saw the disparities firsthand, the systemic neglect of black communities, and she knew that her fight was far from over. She joined civil rights organizations, advocating for integrated hospitals and equal opportunities for black medical professionals. Her experiences abroad had solidified her belief that humanity transcended race, and that true healing required addressing both physical and societal ailments. Colonel Henry Patterson, though a white officer, continued his advocacy for the black soldiers he had commanded. He testified before congressional committees, detailing their heroism and the injustices they faced. He became a vocal proponent of military desegregation, arguing that it was not only morally right but militarily essential. His voice, though often met with resistance, added crucial weight to the growing chorus for change. He understood that the double victory was a national imperative, a moral obligation that America had yet to fulfill. The sounds of the post-war era were a complex blend, the celebratory jazz music of a nation trying to forget, the quiet hum of factories restarting, and the increasingly loud, determined voices of protest. The marching boots of soldiers were replaced by the marching feet of activists. The distant gunfire of battlefields gave way to the impassioned speeches of civil rights leaders. The silence of a segregated waiting room was broken by the courageous demands for equality. The legacy of these black soldiers was profound. Their service in World War II, often overlooked and undervalued, laid crucial groundwork for the civil rights movement. They had proven their courage, their loyalty, and their unwavering commitment to American ideals, even when those ideals were denied to them. Their fight for a double victory was a testament to their resilience, their patriotism, and their enduring hope for a more just and equitable nation. They had embarked on a journey, like the Israelites of old, seeking a promised land. And though the journey was long and arduous, their sacrifices paved the way for future generations to inch closer to that elusive freedom, a freedom that Paul's letters so eloquently championed, a freedom not just from physical chains, but from the spiritual and societal bondage of prejudice. Their story is a powerful reminder that true victory is often won not just on the battlefield, but in the hearts and minds of a nation. Subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss stories of those who fought for our freedom.